Good afternoon. I am Majority Leader Sister Marilyn Rossetti. Welcome to the reconvening meeting of May 12th, 2025. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Councilwoman Bilodeau.
Here.
Councilman Clark.
Here.
Councilman Gale.
Here.
Councilman Hernandez.
Here.
Councilman Mictum. Here. Councilwoman Rosado.
Here.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
Here.
Council President Surgeon.
Here.
Councilman Thomas.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I'd like to make the motion that we take action on financial resolution DIMS number 1. Resolve that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $410,000 to non-operating departments expenditures, 00822 row 1665, object number 822006, pay outside agencies and others, and be it further resolved, budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $106,600 to the non-operating department expenditures, 00822 row 1659, object number 822005, lease payments, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $110,000 to the Court of Common Council expenditures, 00112 row 37, object number 112001, City Council, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $6,600 to Public Works, 00311 row 1288, object number 311007, Parks for reclassification of a maintainer 3 to maintainer 4 position, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 amended to reflect an increase of $20,000 to Public Works, 00311 row 1200, object number 311003, traffic for reclassification of 4 positions in the sign shop, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 amended to reflect an increase of $40,000 to Health and Human Services, 0520 row 1540, object number 520017, Senior Community Services to reflect an additional $10,000 to each Senior Center, North End, South End, Parkville, and Hispanic Senior Centers, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $30,000 to Office of Management and Budget, 00128 row 440, object number 128002, Grants Administration for Fund Grant Writing Services in support of a Puerto Rican Cultural Center SIP application, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $180,000 to Health and Human Services, 0520 row 1540, object number 520017, Senior and Community Services to fund exercise, dance, and programs at the South End and Hispanic Senior Centers, $90,000 to North South End, $90,000 to Hispanic, and be further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $280,000 to Health and Human Services, 0520 row 1540, and object number 520017, Senior Community Services to fund senior food services, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $50,000 to Sports and Recreation, 0142 row 557, object number 142003, Sports and Recreation to fund night gyms, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for the fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $20,000 to non-operating department expenditures, row 0822 row 1636, object number 822002, payment for community impact to fund Friends of Keeney Park for city paddle.
Point of
Second.
order. Are we voting on this now? My understanding was that we were going to take a recess before we voted on all of these resolutions, which I'm seeing right now for the first time. Yeah, these don't. Yeah. I'll repeat myself.
A motion has been made and properly second. Is there any discussion?
I thought we were going to take, I don't know if this is working, so I'm just going to speak loud for you guys. Yeah. I just received these, right? This is more than, I can't read that fast. Are we going to vote on this now, or my understanding was we're going to take a recess?
No, we're not taking a recess.
Madam Chair, I make a motion to go into recess.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor presently.
I believe under Robert's rules, while that motion's on the floor, a motion for recess or postponement may be entertained.
And there's a second on that. Take a motion on to take a recess.
Discussion. Well, she called discussion on the prior, on the motion on this. She didn't call it on the motion for recess.
So the motion on the floor is a recess. Councilwoman Bilodeau?
Well, I'm sorry,
Point of order.
Point of order. Discussion on the motion for recess?
Discussion on the motion to recess.
As the maker of the motion, I appreciate my colleagues' expediency and their ability to move this forward. Having been through these budget hearings now, this is my 10th season, along with Councilman Clark. I can say, and he will certainly have to affirm this, that we have never opened the meeting at noon and immediately started passing resolutions. We may be more than and I'm going to speak for the other two minority members here, or just for myself. I may be more than happy to support these things, but I would like an opportunity to review them to some degree, and I did have a discussion with the mayor yesterday, at which time the mayor assured me that I would have the opportunity to discuss anything with with Julian Freund, our management and budget director, before having to vote on this budget. So I would very politely ask my colleagues for a short recess. I don't think we're looking at a long period of time, but I would like the opportunity for a short recess before we start voting on the matters before you, and I would expect that during that recess there might be some amended financial and non-financial resolutions that come forward from others.
Councilman Mitchum?
I would add to that. I mean, this is, I think 17 pages of resolutions. The only ones I've seen are the ones I wrote. So I literally cannot have read them in the time that we have been in session. And this is our yearly budget. This is the most important thing this body does. We have scheduled, at least according to the invitation I received, 4 hours for this deliberation. I would note that the city is in dire financial straits, the Board of Ed particularly, but not only. This hardly seems like the time to rush through it. I agree with Councilman Gale. We may not make it all the way to 4 o'clock. And I'm glad I have your undivided attention on this matter that you take very seriously, Council Majority. Will y'all let me know when you're ready to listen? Like, this is actually serious, and we should not treat it lightly. This is the most important thing we do in this job. So if we could have a little time both to read and perhaps to discuss amongst ourselves, all of us, reach agreements, do this better, I think that's the bare minimum that the city deserves of us.
If I may, I agree with Councilman Gale and Councilman Mitchum. We should take some time just to talk about it. It's our first time seeing it.
Mr.
Doesn't have to
Clerk,
be a
take the
long
vote.
time.
The motion on the floor is a recess. Councilwoman Bilodeau?
Yes.
Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Gale?
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez?
Yes.
Councilman Mictum?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti?
Yes.
Council President Surgeon. Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
The council stands in recess, and we will
Yes.
reconnect subject to the call of the chair. Thank you.
motion that that I withdraw my motion for DIMS Financial Resolution Number 1.
Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. Okay, all right. I call this meeting back to order. The time is 1:09. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bilodeau?
Here.
Councilman Clark?
Here.
Councilman Gale?
Here.
Councilman Hernandez?
Here.
Councilman Mictum?
Here.
Councilwoman Rosado?
Here.
Councilwoman Rossetti?
Here.
Council President Surgeon?
Are we okay?
Here.
Councilman Thomas?
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam President.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. To you, I'd like to make the motion. I'd like to make a motion to withdraw Financial Resolution DIMS Number 1.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. Any discussion?
To suspend the rules to introduce my new,
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
we have to go back to.
On the withdrawal, Councilwoman Bilodeau?
Yes.
Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Gale?
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez?
Yes.
Councilman Mictum?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti?
Yes.
Council President Surgeon?
Yes.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Withdrawal passes.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. To you, I would like to make the motion that we suspend the rules, and I yield my time to Councilman Mitchell.
Second.
For the purpose of,
For the purpose of introducing additional resolutions that weren't in by the beginning of the meeting.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? Mr.
Thank you
Clerk,
to,
call the
oh,
roll.
just to say thank you to all for agreeing.
On the suspension of the rules, Councilwoman Bilodeau?
Yes.
Councilman Clark?
Yes.
Councilman Gale?
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez?
Yes.
Councilman Mictum?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado?
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti?
Yes.
Council President Surgeon?
Yes.
Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. To you, I'd like to make the motion that we take action on Financial Resolution DIMS Number 1. Resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $410,000 to non-operating department expenditures 00822, row 1665, object number 822006, pay outside agencies and others, and being further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $106,600 to non-operating department expenditures 00822, row 1659, object number 822005, lease payments, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $110,000 to Court of Common Council expenditures 00112, row 37, object number 122001, City Council, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $6,600 to Public Works 00311, row 1288, object number 311007, Parks for reclassification of a maintainer 3 to maintainer 4 position, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $20,000 to Public Works 00311, row 1200, object number 311003, traffic for reclassification of 4 positions in the sign shop, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $40,000 to Health and Human Services 0520, row 1540, object number 520017, Senior and Community Services to provide an additional $10,000 to Senior Center North End, South End, Parkville, and Hispanic, to be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $30,000 to Office of Management and Budget 00128, room 440, object number 128002, Grants Administration, to fund grant writing services in support of a Puerto Rican Cultural Center SIF application, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $180,000 to Health and Human Services 0520, Roll 1540, object number 520017, Senior Community Services, to fund exercise, dance, and programs at the South End and Hispanic Senior Centers, $90,000 to South End and $90,000 to Hispanic, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $280,000 to Health and Human Services 0520, Roll 1540, object number 520017, Senior Community Services, to fund senior food services, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $50,000 to Sports and Recreation 0142, Roll 557, object number 142003, Sports and Recreation, to fund night gyms, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 be amended to reflect an increase of $20,000 to non-operating budget expenditures 0822, Roll 1636, object number 822002, payment for community impact to fund Friends of Keeney Park for City Paddle.
Second.
A motion has been made and properly second. Any discussion? Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
On Deb's Financial One, Councilwoman Bilodeau,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosato,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Council President Surgeon.
Sorry, Mr. Clerk. I wasn't fast enough on the, when it was to have a discussion or make a statement before roll call is being done. Can I still do so?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, Council President.
Thank you so very much, Madam Chair. Just wanted to say, Madam Chair, that I want to sincerely apologize for not being there with everyone in person. As much as I wanted to attend, I made an important decision for myself to be at my grandson's high school graduation and would not simply miss that milestone. But I also want to be honest with you all that over the past week, I have brought many sleepless nights, as we wrestled with the challenges of how we're going to fund the Board of Education deficit, given our city's limited revenue. But I want to make it clear that, I would not have voted for the budget if that, if the Board of Education deficit was not addressed. And because we all know our children's education, is always a top priority. But I also want to say, Madam Chair, that I want to thank the mayor for his tireless work and unwavering commitment, to the school system. He worked really hard to put this budget together to cover the $6.7 million deficit. And I also want to give a shout out to our Speaker of the House, Matt Ritter, also my state representative, who basically is a great advocate and a supporter of the city of Hartford. So I just wanted to say that, Madam Chair, as we go on to vote. And Mr. Clerk, when you get to my call or my name for vote, I would like to say I'm voting affirmatively for the budget.
Through you, Madam Chair, Council President Surgeon, what is your vote on the motion for Dems number 1?
Affirmatively.
Thank you. And Councilman Thomas?
Yes.
Pass.
Councilman Gale, you have the floor.
Taking these slightly out of order, financial resolution, Hartford Party number 2, resolved, and let me ask the town clerk here. I'm going to amend the motion that was submitted in writing. Do I just recite the amended version? Do I?
If you're making a motion on the floor to amend the resolution in front of us, You can do it in the record verbally, and then we'll pick it up for the official record down the road.
Okay, sorry. So let me start then by moving to amend Hartford Party Financial Resolution Number 2. So the amendment should say, resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $100,000 from line item 534098, which is a line item within the city council budget, and a decrease of $150,000 from line item 58899, which is the contingency line item. And be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $250,000 to sports and recreation.
So the amendment on the floor is a motion for Hartford Party Resolution Number 2.
Second that for me. Yes.
Second.
I'll comment, yes.
Motion has been made and properly seconded.
If I may comment,
Any discussion?
Just point of clarification, this is on the amendment?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
yeah, so that was just going to be my comment. This is just to amend, it isn't to approve, it is to amend Hartford Party Number 2 resolution. But I will comment on it, in any case, to simply,
Sorry, Councilman, can you just say again where you're amending from?
absolutely. The decrease from the mayor's recommended budget would come $100,000 from line item 534098, which is it's on page 1 of our budget. It's the bottom line, which stood at $212,000. I understand the Dems Resolution 1 took $100,000 from it.
What's the title of it?
It is titled Other Technical and Professional Services. This is a line item that was added several years ago when council thought we were going to engage a consultant. And this money was added. It's never been used. And my understanding, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe Dems number 1 that just got adopted. I'm sorry, Dems number 1 took $110,000 from that line item, so this would essentially wipe it out, putting it back to zero. And the second part of that is a decrease of $150,000 from the contingency line item, which is on page 41 of our detailed budget. The contingency line item presently sits at $3.6 million. Dems no. It's the present, I'm sorry. So the contingency line item presently sits at 3.6 million, and this would reduce it by 150,000 to 3.457. May I comment further? Thank you. I know we've had a lot of discussion over the last couple of days about our children. Most of that discussion has been centered around the educational budget, and I imagine that before this afternoon is through, we're going to hear some more words about education. And I think it's to all of our credits that we're spending this amount of time on the education budget and on the future of the children here in Hartford and on our city itself. I sent all of you a graph last night that shows some rather disturbing data that the city of Hartford is falling farther and farther behind our suburban counterparts. The particular graph I gave you talked about the mean price of single-family housing in Hartford and the metro area. And if you noticed in that graph, what's happening is that the metro area prices are rising higher, faster than the prices are in the city, which means we are getting poorer vis-a-vis our neighbors. And certainly a portion of that has to be attributable to the lack of buyers, people who want to buy in Hartford. I think a portion of that certainly has to be that if you're a person with school-aged children and you have a choice, you're not going to buy a house in Hartford. And if you're a person with children who already lives in Hartford and you don't get into the lottery school that you want to, and you have the ability, you're going to move out of Hartford. And so these are some disturbing trends, and it's important for us to pay attention to these things. I also mentioned yesterday that our grand list in the city of Hartford has now fallen behind both West Hartford and Glastonbury. Both of those towns' grand lists exceed ours, and yet the sum total of their population is less than the city of Hartford. These are not helpful trends. Again, it therefore means it's very important for us to examine these situations and try to address them. And one of the ways we're trying to address them is with better funding of our educational system so that we don't have 25 kids in a classroom, so that our kids do get art and music and sports. They get the same things as other kids. And we're going to have that discussion. But another whole part of dealing with the kids in Hartford is dealing with recreation for Hartford. And you've heard me say this many times over and over as I advocated for a recreation department, which we now have, and as I've advocated over the years for increasing funds for recreation. We have countless school buildings in Hartford that have gymnasiums, they have swimming pools, they have fields. Many of these facilities are totally underutilized. They're totally underutilized because our recreation department, as it's presently constituted, doesn't have the capacity. I feel it's important for this council over time to continue to give that recreation department capacity. Give them additional funding so that they can expand programs for our children. Because while the school system can educate the child's mind, the recreation can educate the child's soul. And the recreation is a key component to having a healthier population here in Connecticut, here in Hartford, Connecticut. So I'm asking I want to amend downward the resolution that I submitted to request half of what we originally put in, $250,000. And I just want to note that in looking at the Dems resolutions, the Dems have added $180,000 to Health and Human Services specifically for senior programs, another $280,000 to Health and Human Services for additional senior programs, as I understand it, $90,000 in the South End, $90,000 to the Hispanic Senior Center, $280,000 for funding food services, and I believe there's an additional $40,000 to provide $10,000 each to the senior centers. So we just voted on that. The sum total of those increases is $500,000. We have asked, we've taken the mayor's budget and we've said to the mayor's budget, we think another $500,000 should be moved over to seniors. I think it's a rather modest ask to say at the other end of the spectrum, we think half of that amount, $250,000, needs to be moved over to our kids. We're treating our seniors well with $500,000. I think it's reasonable, more than reasonable, to treat our kids well by throwing another $250,000 into the recreation. Thank you.
If I may,
There's Yes, Councilman Clark.
You're fine. I agree wholeheartedly with Councilman Gale, but I'll also say the recreational department does not just help out children. It's a completely multi-generational department. I just recently went to their summer activities fair, and there were almost more activities for me to take part in than my son could take part in. And so it's multi-generational, and it is one department that I would say impacts all generations of residents of the city, in the sense that, you know, children, families, young adults, and including seniors could take part in those programs. So I would say the money probably would even be better suited in that kind of space. And that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Clark. Councilman Mitchum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to agree with what my colleague said, but add 2 points that I don't think they made. One is that, you know, we all know that more and more of our kids don't go to neighborhood schools. There isn't as much of a place where our kids and parents come together in neighborhood and build neighborhood community. Recreation fills in that gap. And if you talk to folks who you know, came up doing some of like the competitive swimming and stuff like that back in the day when we had it, that was a way that they built community with their neighbors and with folks farther afield. So that's important. And I would add that recreation for kids is public safety, right? When kids are engaged after school and on the weekends, they're not getting into trouble, and it makes us all safer. So I think this is an investment that pays us back manyfold. Thank you. And I know we're only voting on the amendment now, but since everyone else was talking about the substance, I thought I'd jump in.
Thank you, Councilman Mitchum. So there is a motion and a second on the amendment. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Motion on the amendment, Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
Nope.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado.
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon. Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
The amendment fails.
Councilman Gale, you have the floor.
Well, I guess I want to thank everybody for defeating the amendment, because now I'm going to ask you to vote on the main motion, which is $500,000 for recreation. And so the main amendment stays as, the main motion rather stays as it was initially submitted. And the request is for $500,000. I will say this. I would welcome any amendment at this time by any other council member. If $250,000 was not a good number for recreation, then I would welcome an amendment by anybody that would change what's on the floor at $500,000 to some lesser number. But otherwise, I guess it stays as it is.
Is there a second?
Kelly, two of the same
Is that a motion?
resolutions? Yeah, he's got two of the, so first he did 250, and now he's doing $500,000?
Council, Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the councilman's plea for sports and recreation, and I do applaud him for being one of the advocates to lead the way for this creation. I just want to preface my points by saying that the vote that was just taken was just not a no just to say no. It was a no because we do have a commitment to make sure that recreation would receive funding in addition to what's being provided in this budget, to make sure not just night gyms are going to be adequately funded, but also to the operations for recreation so that it can serve our student population, all of our children, as well as our adults and seniors. And there is a commitment out there to help support recreation, and so this is why the no was taken, but however, the support is still there to make sure that recreation is going to be fully operational and supported.
Yes,
Madam,
Councilman Mitchum. Councilman Mitchum and then Council President Surgeon, or
thank you. I'll wait.
Council President Surgeon, go ahead.
Just want to also add to the comment by the Assistant Majority Leader. I do know that the Recreation Division over the last past year, I've been very impressed with what they have done, what they are going, and also want to make it be known that, we have to take a look at the revenue in our budget. And we may have a little bit of money in the next 26 fiscal year. And so I would gladly support any increase at that time, because I do know and I do credit the department in doing a hell of a job over this past year since they've been installed. So just want to let Councilman Gale know that I am in support of it. It's just that I don't want to see it now. I want to see what's going to happen in our budget in the next couple of months. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Council President. Councilman Mitchum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, through you, Madam Chair, a question for Councilman Clark regarding that last comment so I understand better. Councilman, you said that there is a commitment out there. Does that mean that the majority intends to vote in favor of the full 500,000?
As it pertains to you, Madam Chair, as it pertains to this resolution?
Yes.
Okay, there's a motion on Councilman Gale's resolution. We're waiting for a second, and then we'll take a vote. Are you asking to say what our votes are before we take a vote, Councilman Mitchum?
Oh, I'm sorry. I also thought we had a second and we're on to discussion. Forgive
Okay.
me. Should I second it so we're doing this properly?
Yes.
Second. Sorry. How do you second? Well, no, we already had the motion was second and then there's the
You
amendment.
made an amendment.
Okay, well, we have a second.
He
I
was
just
just
want,
asking for a clarification on his comment.
I'm trying to understand because I heard Majority Leader Clark say there is a commitment and I'm trying to understand what that means if it doesn't mean a commitment to vote in favor of the funds.
Through you, Madam Chair, the commitment that I am referring to is a commitment from a non-city entity having discussions with the mayor's office. They have already, I would say, they have outside commitments to make sure that recreation will be well taken care of.
Thank you. And Madam Chair, I have one more question
Yes,
for my
Councilman Mitchum.
colleagues. Since I gather that this is going to be a no vote, and I will ask any and all of my colleagues who it would seem intend to vote no on this, what is it in the line items identified by Councilman Gale, particularly, both other tech and professional services and contingency, like, why do you want the money to stay there? What is the money going to do there that it won't do actively increasing activities for kids? Through you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councilman. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
No.
No.
Yes.
No.
Yes.
No.
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 Yes.
Fails.
Councilman Gale, you have the floor.
Hartford Party Resolution Number 1, resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $2 million to police, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $8 million to benefits and insurances, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $10 million, and there seems to be a typo in the resolution. It's $10 million to education.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes.
Councilman Gale?
Thank you. As I alluded to a few minutes ago, I figured we're going to have some more discussion about education this afternoon. I'm repeating some comments I already made and some comments I made yesterday when the mayor gave a press conference in which he noted that He, from unknown sources, unidentified sources, had a commitment of $1.5 million to go to our Board of Education for some very specific funds, and noted that there was another $1.5 million that he felt could be used from our surplus from fiscal year '25 that could be then dedicated to education, thereby coming up with another $3 million for education. And there's some commitment potentially from the state legislature to help close that gap by coming up with another $3.7 million. And my comment yesterday was, I'd rather have the money there than a hope and a prayer. And so today, I'm asking that the money be there, that $10 million be there. And this resolution does not direct the money to any very specific programs, unlike the commitments that the mayor has. The $1.5 million from corporations and other nonprofits is very specifically dedicated money. It's going to go to some very specific programs, and I understand that some of those programs were identified by the board, but this resolution does not specify where the money goes. It gives the money to the Board of Education. I have a non-financial resolution that's being submitted that encourages the Board of Education to use this money for classrooms, to use this money for teachers. We heard yesterday that 194 teaching positions have been eliminated from the Hartford Public Schools. And I would just take note, and this council should be taking note, of the fact that in the budget that we're going to pass today, we have not eliminated, to my knowledge, we have not eliminated a single position within the city of Hartford. We have not cut any department. We have all the same employees and more than we had last year. But your Board of Education has eliminated 194 teaching positions, and we're not doing a damn thing about it. So, in submitting this resolution, I think the Board of Education needs more money. I think class size needs to be reduced. We need to bolster education, folks. And if we don't bolster education, we're sitting on a city that's continuously sliding backwards. I'm not going to repeat the arguments I made about our housing prices, but you need to have these things in mind. Your neighborhoods aren't getting better. We've lost those years when people would move into a neighborhood because a Kennelly school was a great school, because a Rawson school was a great school, because a Batchelder school was a great school. We don't have that anymore. And you don't have people wanting to move into those neighborhoods anymore, and you need to rebuild that. And it's going to cost us money. And until the state of Connecticut can come up with that money, I think we need to tighten our belts and come up with that money. Thank you.
Councilman Mitchum. Majority Leader Clark.
Sure, Councilman, you could have went after Councilman Gale. I do appreciate Councilman Gale's comments. I think our budget crisis is something that we definitely need to tackle with Hartford Public Schools. But I think Hartford Public Schools needs to do a better job in tackling some of the fiscal issues at hand, a lot of which has been noted for quite some time, such as consolidating schools. That's something that needs to be addressed. But I think the bigger crux of the matter is why the declining in student population in our schools. We need to address chef. We definitely need to address chef and understand why we have the disparity in funding and also too in student population. And once we address that, I think that can really get to the meat of some of the budgetary issues. But this is bigger than us, and we need Hartford Public Schools to come to the table with the city of Hartford. We need to really have a serious conversation regarding consolidating Hartford Public School departments and central office, merging them with city departments so that we can be more in line from a budgetary standpoint. But once I believe, and this is just my humble opinion as a parent of two boys in the Hartford Public School system, we need to address the chef issue, because the intent is not the reality. The reality is far worse than I think anybody could have imagined. And once we address that, in my opinion, I think that we can meet some of these other budgetary issues. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilman Mitchum.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm glad I let Councilman Clark go first because I want to agree with the thrust of those comments. I think that's a really good point. We have to address the chef issue, and we have to address for sure sort of other related state funding issues that are, much bigger than what we can do. But I think we also, we are the city council, right? We are not the state legislature. We are not any of us chef plaintiffs or plaintiffs' lawyers. And here we are doing our budget. Right? I would liken it to a situation where suppose you're in a car crash and you know you're going to get an insurance payout. And it's going to be significant. In the meantime, your rent is due. You cannot turn to your landlord and say, look, I'll deal with you later. I got to sort out this other thing. We have to pay for the things we need when we need them. And every year that we don't pay adequately for our schools, kids are falling through the cracks. Every year. Right? So we can't say we're going to get to this. We promise to the 17 and 18 and 19-year-olds who are on the verge of dropping out, just hang tight for me, because they're not going to hang tight for us, all right? They're going to be in the streets. That's what's going to happen, okay? It's convenient to say this is a problem bigger than us, and it is a problem bigger than us, but we also have some power to hold off that problem. And I think by the same token, the question of consolidating schools, and the question which Councilman Clark didn't bring up, but I know has been on many people's minds, and I've had conversations about it with my colleagues, about whether central office of the public schools is operating efficiently. Those are also important questions, but they're not on the same scale as the needs of our children. I mean, when we last consolidated schools between, I think, 2016 and 2019, we closed 4 schools, and we saved $15 million over 4 years. In terms of the central office bloat, the State Department of Ed is doing an audit right now of our schools. And they issued a report, I want to say 3 weeks to a month ago, sort of the preliminary, here's what we found. And they found that central office could save $400,000 in terms of its having too many people working there. So $400,000 or $15 million over 4 years. The Board of Ed's initial budget shortfall this year was $30 million. $30 million this year. I think it was $24 million last year and something similar the preceding year. We're talking about different scales of numbers. So yes, we have to fix things that are wrong with the Board of Ed. Yes, we have to fix things that are wrong with the state. But in the meantime, we have to keep as many of our kids from the edge as possible. And that is what this does. So we can't keep doing our budgets as though our children and their education is the last consideration. But that is what we are doing. That is what we have done every year for the last decade. I heard the mayor say that some of the proposals from myself and Councilman Gale in terms of cutting police would lead to the layoff of 120 officers. I don't know where you got that number. That's a third of the force. Neither of us has proposed a third budget cut. But I think it's important to mention this is a very modest cut to the police. And when we talk about this is not an anti-police bill. This is about making choices. For the last 10 years, we've made choices that have led to hundreds of layoffs and the elimination of hundreds of positions of teachers and paraprofessionals and student-serving staff. Hundreds of them. We have chosen that. We have laid them off to not lay off police. That's the choice we've made. I don't understand it. In all of the budget hearings and all of the public comment, I think I heard one person come up and make a specific point about funding our police more. And I heard hundreds of people come up and make a point about funding our schools more. So I'm not sure what the constituency is that we're serving here by continuing to undermine our schools year after year after year. I too am a parent of Hartford public school children, one who graduated a couple years ago, one who's just getting started and she's in kindergarten. And it concerns me personally, but it concerns me more not personally, because I make a whole lot more than the average Hartford family. I can cover it, you know what I'm saying? Like, what's not there, it'll be a pain if OPMAT is gone next year for me and my wife, right? We're gonna have to figure out some childcare. We'll figure it out. But a lot of my neighbors don't have that money, okay? So this is a proposal to take $2 million out of the police's $55 million. That, you know, that's 4%, 4 or 5%, right? I mean, it's not even clear that that leads to any layoffs, and we're already talking about the loss of 194 teacher positions. That is the choice that you make when you vote no on this, right? You're not taking no action. Inaction doesn't exist. You, Democrats, who I know how you're going to vote, you are choosing larger class sizes for the coming year. You're choosing it. You are choosing potentially fewer wraparound services. You're choosing more kids who want to stay in school and are struggling academically and are going to drop out. That is the choice you are making when you vote no on this.
Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councilman, I appreciate your sentiments as a father of school kids, and we have some differing opinions regarding choices. I think, addressing the elephant in the room, the choices were clear on what the Board of Ed did and decided to do. And I would say that they need to be equally involved with us. And I'm happy to work with you on this and getting them maybe into this chamber and for us to have a conversation with them as to how do we collectively address this crisis. I've been on council for 10 years. Councilman Gill, maybe you can recall, never has the Board of Ed come before us and work with the city council to address some of these educational issues, ever. Only time I've seen them come is when they're presenting the budget. So I think that to address some of these issues that have been systemic, we should be working together right now to address this, because God only knows what we're going to face next year with all these federal cuts that are happening and the state trying to mitigate some of these costs. We need to start addressing these issues today, and it goes beyond whatever vote that's taken on to what monies might be transferred over to them. So happy to work with you on how we come to some type of agreement, but thank you very much for sharing your thoughts.
Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and appreciate those comments, and I think that this council should take you up on that, because I agree, these are bigger issues, and we've done a lot of talking, but we really haven't done any action. Going back to your earlier comment, about the chef case needs to be revisited, absolutely 100% agree. I know this council passed a resolution earlier in which we asked the chef people to come before us and to talk about the case, and I don't think we really got much insight at that point in time, and I'm not sure we were able to convey the concern that we have in Hartford that chef doesn't seem to really be fitting everything. So 100% on board. Next council meeting, let's get a resolution going that calls for both the Board of Education to meet with us on a more frequent basis, as well as maybe some resolution to the state. We ask for chef to be, substantially revisited. I would add one other comment, though, in terms of the statements that were made both yesterday by the mayor and again today, that some of the issues with the Board of Education are going to be dealt with by consolidations over time of various functions with the city and potentially maybe school consolidations. I understand that there's serious discussion about taking our finance department, for instance, and merging it with the finance department of the Board of Education to try to achieve some economy of scale. I believe the mayor mentioned that. I think there's also been some discussion of potentially even folding buildings and grounds in with our DPW. And the idea in both cases, obviously, is to achieve a savings that then relieves the Board of Education and gives them some more money to spend, hopefully, on teachers in the classroom, as I've suggested. The point of this budgetary move today is because those economies are not going to be achieved by September 1. We're not going to see a consolidation of the finance department and buildings and grounds in the next 2 months that's going to achieve these kinds of savings. And I'd be surprised if we see those consolidations occurring over the next 12 months. So in the interim, this additional 10 million can be considered a temporary budgetary measure to cover the gap that's been promised by the mayor that will get covered by economy of services, as opposed to waiting for it to happen and continuing to underserve our children. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Madam Chair, briefly, just to address Councilman Clark's last comment.
Councilman Mitchum.
I just want to, I appreciate also the need for more work on the larger questions, but you know, a lot of our board members, I don't know if all of them, but many of our board members did testify to the legislature. I've been in conversation with, if not all, a majority of them, and I know they've had a lot of conversations with other people who were sitting here before us. I know a lot of them were individually lobbying legislators around different funding issues. So I think they're doing that work. I know a lot of us have also been doing that work, talking to legislators, testifying to the legislature. And I just come back to what I said before and what Councilman Gale said. Those are all good things, but they don't stop the bleeding right now. This would do that.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
On Hartford Party, financial resolution number 1, Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
No.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado.
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon.
No.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Fail.
Councilman Mitchum, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that we put on action, vote, I forgot how I'm supposed to say, put on action, vote for.
Just read it. Working families.
Working Families Financial Resolution 1, resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $10 million to police, item number 00212, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $10 million to education, item number 00711.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion. Councilman Mitchum.
I won't belabor the point because I think I've made the point about funding education, but I want to make one additional point, which is that, and I think I heard Councilman Gale say it, this budget, so much of it as we have approved, the amendments, Dems Financial 1, is all promises but no certainty. There is nothing here for schools unless the legislature comes through, the surplus has to be enough at the end of the year. There's nothing certain. And I just want, the reason I picked this 10 million number to reduce the police budget is because in the time that our schools have been flat funded, the police budget has gone up by $17 million. At the same time, we have fewer sworn officers and crime is much, much lower. And I just want us to think a little bit about the different way that we think about education versus every other service, right? Our approach to education is, well, let's hope something comes through afterward, but no guarantees. About education, about our children, we're saying, you know, well, let's roll the dice. Let's hope the legislature comes through. We never do that for any other department. We never say, let's hope that there's enough money to maintain our police force. We never say that. In fact, when I talked to the mayor about some of these proposals, he said, well, we can't do that within the operational needs of the police department. Okay, we can't do what we do every year within the operational needs of the Board of Ed. We cannot do it. That is why our schools are where they are. We can't do it. We tell the Board of Ed, here's not enough money, go figure it out, hope for the best. And I feel like that is an absolutely backward priority, right? If we want a safer city, a better educated city, a city where people want to stay and want to move to, our approach should be fund our schools fully and then worry about all the other stuff. I don't understand why we do it backwards. It seems unpardonable to me. Obviously, $10 million from the police, that's a fifth of their budget, a little less. That would result in some layoffs. I've talked to you all many times before about how the number of police that we have far exceeds the national average based on our population. I won't belabor that. But we certainly could be taking that approach. We could be saying, well, hopefully the state comes through or the feds come through with some money for our police and that'll shore things up, right? So I'm certainly open. Well, I have another proposal for a more modest reduction. But the police have never been flat funded. Never. Even the year we said that we were reducing the police budget, we ended up spending more by the end of the year. We never take this risk that we're taking with our students on the payment for our police. And I'd love to hear anyone explain to me why we don't bring the same budgetary gambling approach to our police department that we bring to our children's future.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
If I may, I'm so sorry, Madam Chair.
Councilman Thomas?
Sorry, Madam Chair. Just to answer Councilman Mitchell's point, I think not necessarily in regard just to this resolution that's put forward, but I think it sometimes just has to do with like a matter of political power, in the sense that our Board of Ed is usually a department that's facing a group of people that aren't necessarily always voters, aren't always part of the political power groups. And then, I mean, you think about it, like, it's serving children and all the children can't vote. So they aren't in position to affect us all the time. And I don't know, I just think that's, sometimes we got to care about, the people that aren't necessarily the ones that get us here a little bit more. And we can do more, and there's been times where we haven't. I don't necessarily think that my colleagues are going to agree with this number. I think it's a pretty hefty number. It's, what's that, almost 20% of the budget. That's a hefty number. But I do think we should be entertaining conversations to raise up the Board of Education's budget, because it's important. I mean, to Councilman Mitchell's point and Councilman Gale's point, we were all there at Weaver. We were there till like 11 o'clock at night, and nobody came to speak about police. And I think that speaks to things, and speaks to the matter at hand, and what we do with that is why we got elected. That's all.
Assistant Majority Leader Clark, and then Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Quickly, we have a systemic issue, and it goes beyond decreasing monies from any particular department to go over to the Board of Ed. And I know certain departments are focal points of certain counselors, but we also have to keep in mind the neglect of other departments that may need funding to continue their operations. We're the city council, so we set the policy for the city, but the Board of Education, the 9 members, are the individuals who manage, I would say, the Hartford Public Schools. 9 members are responsible for the conduct and the role and responsibilities of the superintendent, not the city council. It is the Board of Ed that sets the educational policy and procedures for Hartford Public Schools. They set their budget. We need to have more accountability with certain things. And I appreciate everybody who's come to talk to us about council stepping in, right? And then that's part of our role. However, we need to take a step back and really find a way to work more in alignment with the superintendent, whoever the new superintendent is going to be, and whoever is going to be on the board for this election year, to really have some tough conversations on how we're going to address these continued issues. I almost put a resolution in for this budget session on a working group to get together between council and Board of Ed and other people to address the educational funding disparities and also to classroom issues. And I'm happy to talk with any of my colleagues for our next council meeting to work on that resolution to to move that forward. However, it goes beyond just this budget. And so that's something I just want everybody just to really soak in as to how we address this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Assistant Majority Leader. Councilman Gale.
Well said.
Thank you. And I hope you do submit the resolution calling for some sort of a working group. Not that you'd have me, but I'd be happy to be on it. And you're right about the Board of Education. Like us, they're the policy-making body, but we do have to recognize that our Board of Education's hands are tied in so many ways, that they can't control, we can't control, the state legislature might be able to control. I come back to the statistic that came out in our budget hearings last year and this year. We, the city of Hartford, have 304 kids in our system that max out. Their special needs are so great that the city of Hartford has to spend 4.5 times, that's state law, you have to spend 4.5 times the average amount on a kid before the state will take over. Those 304 students cost our Board of Education $31.2 million. 31.2. Above that, they cost more than that. And the state pays. Is it reality that the city of Hartford somehow has the greatest proportion of special needs kids in the entire state of Connecticut? These clearly are issues that are outside any control of our Board of Education. They are within control of the state, and I know I've called for it, and others have called for special education to be taken over by the state. No town should have to suffer what we have to suffer. But we are back to the reality. Right now, that's the reality. We got to spend $31.2 million on these kids. And Jen Hockenhall, if anybody's interested, she did a 2-page spread on this and that got sent to the state delegation so they could understand it. It was very clear, and it was laid out very nicely. I would throw this out there, understanding that folks might not want the Working Families Financial Resolution because it's taking all of the money from the police department. I am certain that Working Families would accept an amendment made by anyone to take that money from somewhere else. If you feel it's inappropriate to take $10 million from the police, or $9 million, or even $500,000 from the police, I'm certain that it would, Working Families would welcome an amendment that says, let's take the money, some from here, some from here, some from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gale. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Working Families Financial Resolution number 1. Councilman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
No.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosato.
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon.
No.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Fail.
Councilman Mitchum, you have the floor.
Move that we take up Working Families Financial Resolution Number 2, resolve that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $750,000 to PAYGO CAPEX Reserve, item number 591047, to be drawn from the police firing range project, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $750,000 to education, item number 00711.
There is a motion and a second. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchum.
Just by way of explanation, some of you will recall when we're discussing with Paul Drummy the capital improvement projects and different things like that. One of those projects was the police firing range in the North Meadows that has needed for some years some repairs to keep bullets from going through to East Hartford. I am not here saying that we should never fix that. But you may also recall that I asked at the time, how long has this been a problem? And it was some years. The incident where a bullet made it to East Hartford was some years ago, and that has restricted the shooting that they can do there. So it's clearly not that urgent, because our police continue to police, and they haven't been able to do all the shooting that I guess they want to do at that firing range. All I'm saying is, not right now, because between a project that we have managed to not do for a number of years, and again, the urgent needs of actual children in this city, I'm gonna go with the children every time. So I'm just asking you to consider putting off fixing the firing range. There are other firing ranges that they can go to. There's one out in Avon, it's very lovely, Simsbury, right there by Talcott Mountain. They'll be fine. Our kids will not be fine.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Working Families Financial Resolution Number 2, Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
No.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilman Rosado.
No.
Councilman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon.
No.
Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Fail.
Councilman Mitchum, you have the floor.
I move that we take up Financial Resolution Working Families Number 3, resolve that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $200,000 to Chief Operating Officer regular payroll, item number 510105, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $200,000 to education, item number 00711.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Discussion.
Very briefly.
Councilman Mitchum.
The mayor's budget proposes the creation of a deputy chief operating officer, not a thing that we have had in the past. It costs $200,000. And I am simply saying, as I said with the firing range, we have gotten by with the chief operating officer and no deputy chief operating officer for many, many years. I think we can get by for another year in a time of acute fiscal crisis. So I think we should just put off that question for now in favor of our children.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Working Families Financial Resolution Number 3, Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
Nope.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado.
No.
Councilman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon. Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Fail.
Councilman Mitchum, you have the floor.
I move that we take up Financial Resolution Working Families Number 4, resolve that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect a decrease of $1,877,990 to police, item 00212, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect an increase of $1,877,990 to education, item number 00711.
Second.
Thank you.
There is a motion has been made and properly second. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchum. Councilman Mitchum.
I picked this number because this is just what it would be to flat fund the police for the last 2 years. So a small fraction of what our schools have suffered. this would be to turn to the police and say, okay, now it is your turn to take a modest hit for the greater good. It's giving you an option that probably wouldn't lead to any layoffs or at most 1 or 2 sworn officers, but would have a dramatic impact on the well-being of our children, should be an easy choice.
Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to applaud Councilman Mitchum. I need to take up your skills on sounding like an auctioneer. So let me know when you have class.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Never let it be said that I waste time, but I think Councilman Gale wanted to speak on this as well.
I do.
Councilman Gale.
Very presidential.
I want to thank my colleague for for the imagination and the ability to bring forward these various iterations of how to get more money to education. And having said that, I just want to note that I believe this is the last financial, so we're going to end our financial resolutions at this point in time. And you've had in front of you 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is going to be the 7th resolution that is asking for more money for our kids. And it's been turned down. Every single one's been turned down. I'm sure if you wanted to amend this one to get some modest sum to indicate that at some level there's some interest from this council to assisting the children of the city of Hartford, that those amendments would be welcome. But not having an amendment is going to put this council on record as 7 times voting for no money, no increase for our education, no money for recreation, and there's nothing that's been proposed. You know, it's not as though you're defeating somebody else's recommendations by saying, well, but we're going to do it over here. There's no increase in this budget, period. There's a hope and a prayer that we've all heard about, but there's no increase in this budget that's coming. Thank you.
Assistant Majority Leader Clark.
Thank you, Madam President. Just to be brief, thank you for the comments and these resolutions. However, we stand on the commitment of the city and the mayor. The city provided the total of $6 million, I believe, that will help stop the funding gap. And again, we need to really have this collective conversation as to moving forward, how we're going to, in some other words, stop the bleeding regarding budgetary issues. To the point regarding flatlining, not doing flat funding, it's not necessarily accurate because my mind takes me back to now maybe 3 or 4 years where there have been additional monies that have been provided to Hartford Public Schools from the city of Hartford as a budgetary transfer during the course of the school year that has given a certain level of additional funding that the board was not able to achieve on its own. So from our budgetary standpoint, on far as the recommended budget, yes, it's been flat. In totality, it has not, which still shows our commitment to education and supporting the Hartford Public Schools. And I have no doubt that this administration will still work to find additional funding for our students and families in collaboration with our federal officials and also to our state officials, which they are still underway trying to ascertain how much we're going to receive through the state budget. Thank you.
Councilman Mitchum.
I appreciate that some money comes in unpredicted every year, as it does to the police, usually through federal and state grants. But the important thing is that all our other departments, they go up one year, then they go up the next year on top of that. They build, like inflation operates, as we all know from living in the world. But the school's budget has been the same. Now we're going into year 11, okay? From what I was able to understand from talking to members of the Board of Ed, Our school's budget now is at about, I think, 248, 249 million, where it should be if it had just increased along with need, along with outside costs, would be on the order of 300 million. If us funding it the same every year and throwing a little bit every year and then starting again from that baseline, if that's a commitment, I mean, I think that's an abuse of language to call that a commitment to education. I know that there are bigger issues. I know that there are other things to address. But to keep coming back to those things, and I say this to you with respect, Councilman Clark, because we've talked about this a lot, and I know that we agree on a lot of fundamentals, but to keep talking about Board of Ed got to do this, state has to do that, it's like I was in a car accident, I'm in the hospital bleeding, and you're talking to me about how I should drive. It doesn't matter right now because I'm bleeding. We have to solve that problem first. All this other stuff is red herrings, it's distractions, and it's a failure on our part.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Working Families Financial Resolution number 4, which was walked on via suspension of the rules. Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
No.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilman Rosado.
No.
Councilman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon.
Hold on, no.
Thank you. Councilman Thomas. Fail.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I asked a question, maybe it's a ruling from the Corporation Council through you. Is it improper for us to call for the non-financial resolutions to be taken up as one? Taken up as one, the three of them.
Three were read together.
All the
Dems.
Dems, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I make a motion that the non-financial democratic resolutions be taken up as one.
Second.
There has been a motion and a second. All in favor?
Wait,
I have discussion.
could we have them read?
No, I'm going to read them. But I'm
Okay.
just going to
Yeah.
read. I'm going to read them in order that they're numbered, but it'll just be one. No.
Okay.
What are we doing?
Let's call the vote on taking this up.
Oh. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
The motion is to take up all the DEM non-financials as one package. Councilwoman Bilodeau.
Yes.
Councilman Clark.
Yes.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
Yes.
Councilman Mictum. Councilman Rosado.
Yes.
Councilman Rossetti.
Yes.
Council President Surgeon.
Yes.
Councilman Thomas. Motion passes.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'd like to make the motion that we take action on non-financial resolution, Democratic Party. Resolve that that if there is a fiscal year 2020, resolve that if there's a fiscal year 2024-2025 surplus in excess of $5 million, surplus fines in excess of that amount up to a maximum of an additional $4.5 million shall be transferred to the Education Non-Lapsing Fund and committed fund balance and be available to the Board of Education for education expenses. Resolve that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 25 to 26 be amended to include a mechanism to ensure the city's capital projects align with the needs and priorities of our residents. As we continue to push economic development and other projects, large and small, in the city, let us find a way to systematically include the neighborhoods and share the information more succinctly and intentionally, whether via the city website, emails, text alerts, etc. Resolve that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025 to 2026 be amended to reflect alternative methods for the Board of Education cost reduction by implementing consolidation of services with other city departments such as BOE and city sharing human resources, BOE and city sharing finance. Currently, the Metro Hartford Information System Services, MHIS, provides services to the BOE and all city departments, and it has proven to be efficient and economical.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Discussion. Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
On non-financial DEMS 1 and 2, Councilwoman Bilodeau.
1, 2, and 3.
1, 2, and 3. Thank you for the
Yes.
correction. Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilman Migdum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Council President Surgeon, Councilman Thomas. Pass.
Councilman Gale, you have the floor.
Hartford Party Non-Financial Resolution Number 1, resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect that the Board of Education must use additional funds from the city to fund teachers in the classroom, and be it further resolved that the mayor's recommended budget be amended to reflect that the Board of Education must use said funds to restore classroom teaching positions that have been eliminated in the past year due to budget constraints. Resolved that the mayor's recommended budget be amended to reflect that the Board of Education must, in making personnel decisions, make every reasonable effort to reduce class sizes to 20 students or fewer.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly second. Any discussion?
Yes, may I comment?
Councilman Gale?
I want to just reflect back for a second on the Dems resolution that was, non-financial resolution that was just passed, that noted additional funds of $4.5 million. If such money exists, that money above $5 million go to the Board of Education. And I just want to clarify so that the public understands, of that $4.5 million, my understanding is the first $3 million of it was already committed by the mayor quite some time ago. And that's not part of closing any $6.7 million budget gap. That $3 million was committed and was taken into account by the Board of Education in their budget deliberations. The additional $1.5 million is the money that the mayor mentioned yesterday that could be committed from our surplus. So this non-financial essentially seconds what the mayor said yesterday, adding the stamp of approval of this council on taking budget surplus up to really up to $9.5 million, and taking $4.5 of it and sending it over to the Board of Education. I know that the Board of Education came forward with some very specific asks that made up that $6.7 million, and we know that, as mentioned yesterday in the press conference by the mayor, that $1.5 million of those very specific asks may be, apparently there's promises that they will be funded through nonprofits or other corporations. And that's all well and good. Those are going to be very specific. Those corporations and nonprofits are going to say, this money goes very specifically to this program, understood. Our money doesn't specifically have to go to anything. And so this non-financial resolution is asking this council to express its intent, its policy, stating that if more money can go to the Board of Education, board, first use it for classroom teachers. First, try to restore some of those 194 budget teachers that were eliminated. First, try to put art and music back into the schools, where we know that there are over 5,000 of our students who are getting no art and no music. First, try to restore some library services, where I think we're down to maybe 1 or 2 librarians throughout the entire system. So that's what this non-financial resolution is stating. It's stating to the board, it's obviously non-binding, but it's stating to the board our policy that we would like you to lose it in the classrooms, or at a minimum in the building. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Hartford Party Non-Financial Resolution Number 1. Councilwoman Biladu,
No.
Councilman Clark,
No.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez,
Nope.
Councilman Migdum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
No.
Council President Surgeon, Councilman Thomas. Fail.
Councilman Mitchum, you have the floor.
I move that we consider non-financial resolution, Working Families number 1. Resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect that the Hartford Police Department shall begin posting all Hartford crime statistics and data, including reported instances of police misconduct, online. This shall include aggregated data and no identifying personal information on anyone involved in a crime. Second, anyone?
Second. Sorry.
Motion has been made and properly second. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchum?
I don't think it needs a lot of explanation. It just thinks, it's good. Transparency is good. We have struggled to get transparency from our police. It's probably good to make them post these data. That's all.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Working Families non-financial resolution, number 1. Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
No.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilman Rosado.
No.
Councilman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon. Councilman Thomas. Fail.
Councilman Mitchum, you have the floor.
Move that we consider non-financial resolution, Working Families number 2. Resolved that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect that the Director of Equity and Opportunity shall conduct a language justice audit to review the practices of all city departments, to review the state of language accessibility in all public-facing positions and procedures. The language justice audit is to be completed by the end of fiscal year 2026 and should produce a report to be made available to City Council and to the public.
Second.
A motion has been made and properly second. Any discussion? Councilman Mitchum.
You all know that we are a city that does not entirely speak English. At our last public hearing, our last budget public hearing, we had folks talking about the fact that we don't have interpretation even for our most broadly spoken second language, which is Spanish, which is very broadly spoken. It's still the case that when people come to address this body, one of us who's bilingual has to translate for them. If they speak Spanish or Portuguese, which we have folks who can manage. That is not how it should be in a city of our size and our diversity, and that goes on down the line. I mean, I move around the city and I see just translations of signs, basic things that are, at least the ones that are in a language that I know, are just terribly translated. And in addition to hurting our ability to inform our residents about the things that are accessible to them, it feels disrespectful, right? Like if we can't do Spanish right in our signage, Spanish, so many people here speak Spanish, we can't get our signs to be translated properly, right? It's disrespectful. I think we could do this much.
Yeah, if I may, Madam Chair.
Councilman Thomas.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree with Councilman Mitchum on this one, and if my dim colleagues will remember at the public hearing, our very mayor said that the public hearing, this won't happen again next year, but truthfully, that's the same thing we had said the year before. And so, like the year before at the public hearing, we were supposed to have a Spanish translation, and we did, but that was a volunteer from the crowd. I think it was Constanza and like somebody else, like, just happened to just do it for us. And that's not right. Like, you know what I mean? Like, even thinking about this council makeup, there's some Spanish speaking, people here on council. Like, we could do that one. Like, if we're not going to do the other ones, we could do this one. That's how I feel. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Non-financial resolution, Working Families, number 2. Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
No.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado. Councilwoman Rosado.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon. Councilman Thomas.
C.
Fail.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Oh.
Excuse me, Councilman Mitchum, I thought you had 4.
Thank
I
you,
thought you
Madam.
had 3.
Thank you, Madam President, or Madam Chair. I have a third that's why one of the reasons.
Oh.
And I will just note that it says number 4, but I'm going to say number 3 when I read it. So I move that we consider non-financial resolution Working Families number 3. Resolve that the mayor's recommended budget for fiscal year 2025-2026 be amended to reflect that the first $10 million of any surplus in the overall budget for fiscal year 2025 be transferred to the Hartford Board of Education.
There has been a motion, and it's properly second. Discussion. Councilman Mitchum.
This is very much like the Dems Financial One, which I also supported. The only difference is that Dems Financial One says that the first 4.5, if there's a surplus and the surplus exceeds 5 million, the first 4.5 million after that should go to the Board of Ed. And what I'm proposing is something a little broader and a little less qualified, which is that if there is any surplus at all, the first 10 million of it should go to the Board of Ed. So it's a similar principle, it's just prioritizing the Board of Ed. And I understand that the practice has been for the first 5 million, anytime there's a surplus, to sort of be set aside, I don't remember the exact term, but to be set aside for emergencies of various sorts. And I think that's a good practice. And I'm just saying that on this particular year, where the Board of Ed has done something unusual, which has come to us and said we really can't make a budget work with the money given and we need X amount more, this is a time that we depart from our custom and treat the most pressing emergency as our schools and put any surplus effectively toward them.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Madam Chair.
Councilman Gale.
Yeah, thank you. Just to note that the significance of this resolution as compared to the one that has passed, this resolution would send an additional $5.5 million to the Board of Education that has not been included in anybody else's money. So the resolution that we've earlier passed today sends $4.5 million. As we've mentioned, $3 million of that was already promised months ago. $1.5 million was discussed yesterday. So passing this one would add to that another $5.5 million that's not been designated by anybody. So it would be an expression of this body saying, yes, we think you need more than the monies that have already been discussed, more than the $1.5 million that was discussed yesterday, or the promise of money that may be coming from the state legislature. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Working Families non-financial resolution number 3, which was walked on via suspension of the rules. Councilwoman Bilodeau.
No.
Councilman Clark.
No.
Councilman Gale.
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez.
No.
Councilman Mictum.
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado.
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti.
No.
Council President Surgeon. Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Fail.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to make the motion to take action on substitute ordinance and ordinance making general fund appropriations for the planning, design, acquisition, and construction of various public improvements and equipment aggregating $13,296,295, with new authorizations totaling $10,517,000 and low SIP funded projects totaling $2,779,295.
Second.
There has been a motion, and it's properly second. Any discussion?
Chair,
Councilman Gale?
could I have an explanation of the motion?
This is for the CIP.
This?
Yes.
Yes. Is this as a substitute from?
It's not substitute. I thought it was. Oh, okay. So I strike the substitute motion for just a regular action for the CIP ordinance.
So this is no change from what was submitted to council to begin with?
No, it was it was my misunderstanding where I thought it was a substitute ordinance, but it is. I'm being told it is not. So there's no changes that's been made to the CIP allocations.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
Councilwoman Bilodeau,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Council President Surgeon, and Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Pass.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you, I'd like to make the motion that we take action on tax levy ordinance introduced by Mayor Aruna Arulampalam in ordinance concerning the tax levy for the fiscal year beginning July 1st. Is this a substitute? All right, so I stand corrected. I'll strike my motion. I would like to make the motion that we take action on substitute tax levy ordinance introduced by Mayor Aruna Arulampalam in accordance, I keep on saying in accordance, an ordinance concerning the tax levy for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025.
Second.
There's been a motion, it's properly second. Discussion?
I-
Seeing none, Mr. Clerk, call the roll. Oh, Councilman Clark.
Thank you, Madam President.
Sorry,
Through you, I'd just like to make note that the city, on October 1st, 2024, the grand list is hereby granted a tax of 68 with 0.95 of a mill, which makes the mill 68.95 on the dollars to be levied upon all relatable real estate within the city of Hartford.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll.
The substitute tax levy ordinance, Councilwoman Bilodeau,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Council President Surgeon, Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Pass.
Assistant Majority Leader, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. Through you, I'd like to make the motion that we take action on the substitute general fund appropriation ordinance for the fiscal year introduced by Mayor Aruna Arulampalam. With the Court of Common Council, City of Hartford, be ordained by the Court of Common Council, City of Hartford, on May 21st, 2025, which makes Section 1 the following appropriations for fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2025, and hereby made in the general fund, which is a total of $626 million, $620,320,988.
Second.
There's been a motion made and properly second. Any discussion? Councilman Gale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I make a motion to amend this ordinance to reduce the line item, to increase the line item for the Board of Education from $284,013,274 by $10 million, so that line item reads $294,013,274, and to, at the same time, reduce the line item for the Police Department by $2 million, so that reduction would take it from $55,014,467 to $53,014,467, and to reduce the line item for benefits and insurances by $8 million, reducing the $106,820,091 to $98,820,091.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to amend. I don't have it in front of me.
General fund
General-
appropriations.
Yep. Discussion? Councilman Mitchum.
Well, it's Gale's amendment.
I-
It's Gale's amendment, so I let him go first.
We've been over it. It's certainly another opportunity. Should minds have been changed by anything that's been said this afternoon, this is seemingly a last chance to take another look at this. And again, if 10 million is not a good number, and anybody would like to further amend the amendment, that would be welcome. But this is the number that I've been working with, and I'll stick with it. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll on the
No,
amendment.
I'm sorry, I did want to add one.
Councilman Mitchum.
If we fail to adopt this amendment, we fail our children. And we should feel ashamed.
Mr. Clerk, call the roll on the amendment.
On the amendment for the general fund appropriation ordinance for fiscal year '26, Councilwoman Biladu,
No.
Councilman Clark,
No.
Councilman Gale,
Yes.
Councilman Hernandez,
No.
Councilman Mictum,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rosado,
No.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
No.
Council President Surgeon, Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Fail.
Mr. Clerk, a motion was made and properly second on the original ordinance.
The motion before us is the general fund appropriation ordinance for fiscal year '26. Councilwoman Biladu,
Yes.
Councilman Clark,
Yes.
Councilman Gale,
No.
Councilman Hernandez,
Yes.
Councilman Mictum,
No.
Councilwoman Rosado,
Yes.
Councilwoman Rossetti,
Yes.
Council President Surgeon, Councilman Thomas.
Yes.
Pass.
Thank you. That's it, but I'm going to say a quick thing before we leave, and I hope my colleagues will indulge me. First of all, a lot of things were said here today, and I appreciate everyone's hard work, but I would not want to leave without thanking some people in particular. The budget that we put together in the city of Hartford is well thought out, is difficult, is done by a lot of people with a lot of input, and we all don't come out where we think we should be. But I want to thank Councilman Hernandez in particular during the budget, really every single budget meeting, chairing OMB. I really appreciate your hard work and what you put into that. I want to thank, I know she's not here, Noelia Ortiz, who works for you, but for all of us, and I really appreciate that. I want, oh, and she's right there. I want to thank all the staff in the city council office, because oftentimes I think the staff in the city council office are talked about in a way that probably isn't as respectful as it could be. It's a unique position, it's a hard position, and I really appreciate the work that they do. I want to thank the town clerk's office. I know it's just a grind all the time. Julian, look at him, he pretends like he doesn't know who he is. We want to thank Julian and his office, really. I want to thank the mayor's office. I also want to really say that, and I'm going to say the word proud, because I am proud of the work that we've done. Not only up here, not only today, not only the last few weeks, but 365 days a year. As a lifelong Hartford resident, as a product of Hartford Public Schools, as a daughter of a teacher, as a father who didn't have an 8th grade education, and when I sit here and think about what I was able to achieve, I know for a fact, not for everyone, but I'd like to say everyone, we all have that same goal, that every child still has that in the city of Hartford. But I also hear from many people my age who have other views and other opinions around issues that are to them equally as important. So I am still, with all that we've done over the last year, really proud of the work that we've done. I am proud to work with the mayor's office, and I will now call this meeting to adjourn. Thank you.